Hi friends, you are welcome to Literature Simply, simple way to learn literature and language. Friends, in this video we are going to discuss about critical approaches to literature. Here I have collected a few basic critical approaches to literature and we are going to discuss all these approaches. So let's start the video. Why critical approaches to literature? The very basic question we think about when we think about literature comes to our mind how to derive meaning from a particular text. For example, from a poem, a novel, short story, or essay, or any literary uh, piece of work. So here our main concern is to find out the meaning through these different types of literary approaches. So there are many theories and approaches to literature, and most of the time we get confused how to apply these theories or how to apply these approaches to literature to find out the meaning. So there is a significant process in this application of literary theories and approaches, and this leads us to the expected meaning of that particular text. One principle which is highly adhered in literature is that there is no fixed meaning or the meaning in literature. Based on this principle, we can say that there is as many meanings as the quantity of readers. So we should think about this principle. Actually, when we think about meaning, it is shaped in the mind of readers, which is based on different factors and different elements. So what are those elements or factors? Let's think about them. And here we have the very first approach to literature, historical and biographical approach. Actually, this is the combination of two different approaches. One is historical and the other is biographical. But the amalgamation of these two approaches makes one single approach because the information or the elements in both approaches are similar. For example, what is there in historical is in biographical, because in this approach we collect information about the author, his age, how did the author grow up, his experiences, how did he spend his life. So different types of historical information from the author's life and also from the age of the author we collect. So details from the birth of the author or poet to his or her upbringing and writing career is discussed in this approach, and we have so many examples of this historical approach, or we can apply this approach to the works like John Milton's On His Blindness, On His Deceased Wife and Samson Agonistes. Again, we have James Fenimore Cooper's Last of the Mohicans, Sir Walter Scott's Ivanhoe, Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, and John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath. When we think about these texts, all these texts are based on history. So there is historical events happened in this kind of text. So we can analyze these historical events or historical background of the text. For example, here we have John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath. So this Grapes of Wrath is based on the Great Economic Depression occurred in 1913 America. So this is the delineation of that particular era, 1930s. Again, we have here second approach, which is psychological approach. In psychological approach, we can understand different types of psychological theories. For example, this approach is developed in modern period with the theories of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is one of the most significant psychologists who have contributed to the development of psychology in modern period. So he talked about libido, that is sexual motivations or sexual desires, dreams, which he called unfulfilled desires, conscious, unconscious state of mind, ego, superego, the division of mind, the structure of mind. So all these elements can be added, and these elements can be used as a tool of analysis in a particular text, in a particular literary text. For example, here we have Hamlet. When we think about Hamlet, simple questions come to our mind. Why did Hamlet behave like this? Why did he face dilemma in his mind? And here we get a direction to peep into the mind of Hamlet, and we come to a conclusion that is Oedipus complex. So The theory of Oedipus complex can be applied to Hamlet and find out the meaning. Why did Hamlet behave like that? Again, here we have some other examples of this psychological approach. Here, Herman Melville's Moby Dick, Nathaniel Hawthorne's My Kinsman, Major Molyneux, Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Edgar Allan Poe's fiction, William Blake's poems, and Andrew Marvell's To His Quiet Mistress can be understood with the help of psychological approach. So, this is the second approach. The third approach, here we have linguistic and structural approach to literature. So it is very different approach than the above two approaches, because in this approach we need not to consider the author or poet, we need not to think about his background or historical information or biographical information. So this approach is based on the language and structure component of the text, and text, its language and structure is significant in this approach. So this approach is very useful for students, because students need not to consider the background of author or even the name of author or even the name of that poet, but they can analyze a poem or text based on this approach. Here we have to consider a few things. For example, we have to consider the structure, how the poem is built, what is the structure of poem, how it has been connected with different stanza forms, what kind of syntax is there, what kind of diction is used. What is diction? Diction is nothing but a particular kind of vocabulary or particular kind of words used in a literary text. So what kind of diction is used in that particular poem, what kind of figures of speech are used in the poem or in the text, what is the style of writing. So these elements lead us to the expected meaning of a poem or of a text. So we can consider these elements and analyze that text. Again, we have fourth approach here, which is significant, a mythical and archetypal approach. Actually, our vast range of literature is rooted in or originated from folklore, traditions, legends, and through this we have so many myths came into existence. What are myths? Myths are nothing but the short tales which are passing from generation to generation. And we consider myths are not real, but though they are not real, they represent and reveal the particular kind of people and their culture. So this is significant to understand that particular text. So myths are nothing but short tales or plots collectively passing from generation to generation, as we have talked about it. And what are archetypes? So archetypes are nothing but common and agreed images and symbols, most of the times derived from myths. Now see the relationship between myth and archetypes. So archetypes and myths are interconnected, because most of the archetypes are derived from the myths, as here we have seen. And these are nothing but recurring in the wide variety of literature in the form of recurrent narrative patterns, character types, images, themes, plots, etc. For example, here we have T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which begins with an epigraph, and the epigraph says, "Sibyl, what do you want?" And she answered, "I want to die." So this is nothing but a reference to the Greek mythology. So Sibyl is a neuter gender, appeared in Greek mythology, and T.S. Eliot has taken or used this mythical reference in his composition of The Wasteland. Again, we have the same recurrent image of water, which represent destruction and bereavement in J.M. Singe's Riders to the Sea. And there are so many other symbols and images which are used in literature, and based on this we can dissect the meaning from that literary text. So this is mythical and archetypal approach. And friends, now here we have the last but significant approach, feminist approach, which is one of the most widely practiced approaches of literature nowadays. So take any literary work, we generally apply feminist approach to the that literary text, and the main concern of feminist literary approach is to stress out feminist concerns. So what are the feminist concerns? Now here we have some of the feminist concerns, like number one, who is the author of the text, whether it is male or female, what kind of representation of women characters in male writers, are there in the text, and we can compare the representation of women characters in male writers and the representation of women characters in female writers, and know the difference between both. We can examine whether women are ill-treated or given marginal status in the text. Again, we have next concern, suppression of women in literature as characters and writers. So the main concern is suppression of women, how women are suppressed from so many centuries, and how they are represented in the literary texts, or generally or broadly in literature, is the main aim of this feminist approach. Again, we can explore whether women and men are biologically, linguistically, or socially differed. So what is the difference between them, whether they are socially constructed or biologically constructed? So we can explore in any literary text. And the last concern of a feminist approach is identity of female in literature, how they are given the status, whether it is marginal. So friend, these are the 5 major critical approaches to literature which I considered very significant, and with the help of these approaches you can lead to the meaning, you can know the meaning of a particular text, or you can analyze or interpret any text. And let me clear one thing about these approaches, there is no approach perfect or complete in itself, it has its own limitations. So here we cannot apply a single approach and have meaning of the text. We have to apply multiple approaches to single text, so that we can go to the meaning, or we can derive the meaning from that particular text. So don't rely on any single approach, but work in multiple approaches, or apply the multiple approaches to single work. Again, apart from these 5 basic or 5 significant approaches, we have other approaches which are based on literary theories. For example, we have a moral and philosophical approach, formalist approach, cultural approach, structuralist, post-structuralist, and deconstructionist approach. So friends, you can apply all these approaches to the literature and know the meaning or analyze the text in consideration. So thank you very much for watching the complete video, and I hope you understand this video. And if you have difficulty in understanding, please go to website literaturesemply.com, where I have uploaded fine article on the same topic, and where you can also download the article for your further reference. Friends, like this video, share this video among your friends, and very important, subscribe to Literature Simply and press the bell notification icon, so that you can get updates on language and literature.